The altcoin market in general has performed pretty well in the last month, but Render is outperforming. The question is why? Who is buying here? Who is selling here? Let's have a look at the on-chain data, the data most people are not considering. It's not just price outperformance, it's also more attention. Here is the most viewed cryptocurrencies in the last 24 hours. Render is at place number 3. Year to date, so since beginning of the year, the price has more than doubled. But interestingly enough, that's not a long-term trend. What we see over here, that's the Render price relative to the altcoin market cap. So how is Render doing relative to all other alts? I like to look at these kind of charts because it gives us an idea how an alt is doing comparatively speaking. Because in general, if the market is going up, then all the altcoins go up as well. If Bitcoin crashes, most altcoins come down. But with relative valuation charts like this, we can actually see how is an asset doing idiosyncratically. Now, this dotted line over here, that's the average ratio of the Render price relative to the others market cap. The 100% rally since beginning of the year is over here, so Render did outperform the rest of the market. And to this potential equilibrium, there's another 33% or so performance from here. Let's have a look at a few on-chain metrics. We've got a burning mechanism with Render, and that's one of the main selling points. Since Render disappears from circulation, the price long-term should go up. But really have a look at how many tokens get burned per day, and have a look at the accumulated burn over time. And then have a look at the emission schedule. The emissions are in the tens of millions. The accumulated burning is less than 1 million. So really, the emissions outweigh the burning, and that means an expanding token supply long term. Here's the burnt Render and the network revenue over time per epoch. So the revenue is in green. And interestingly enough, this chart on the Render page is not showing the entire history. So we have to click us through the history to see the development. The peak was at 130K in a week in December of 2024. But since then, we were never able to supersede that peak. So really, it doesn't seem like the Render network is long-term growing. It seems to just hover along. And the recent price rise is definitely not due to more usage. The network revenue is rather low right now. And so that's then the circulating supply over time. Again, we've got more emissions than burns. How quickly is it going up? Let's take the data point 1 year ago. So we've got 389 million Render tokens. Now we've got 459 Render tokens. And that implies an annual growth rate of around 17%, which by the way is very typical. That's the average expansion rate in terms of circulating supply for the entire altcoin market. Some altcoins are expanding quicker, some are expanding slower. In the past, the Render supply grew much quicker. Still, now it's 17% per annum. And so when the token supply expansion is very similar to what the rest of the altcoin market is doing, this chart now makes sense. Render is simply just hovering along with the altcoin market. Sometimes it's expensive, sometimes it's cheap, but it seems to move in line with what the annual altcoin market is doing. And so tokenomics, or the expansion of the supply, is extremely important, especially if a project is not aggressively growing. And we have seen that Render currently isn't growing that quickly. Have a look at the comparison to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's inflation rate is currently at 0.83% per annum. So that's 0.83 compared to 17%. And that's going to be cut in half in April of 2028. And so relative to the altcoin market, Render is doing fine. Relative to Bitcoin, not so much. This is an underperformance even after the recent rally of 76%. And that's over the course of a bit over 4 years. The chart looks even worse once we look at this on a linear scale, not on a logarithmic scale. What is very impressive when we zoom in looks much less impressive once we zoom out. Now, what's the reason for this rally in Render? It seems like the artificial intelligence of CoinMarketCap doesn't really give us anything useful. There's a technical breakout, there is trading volume surge, and apparently the AI narrative is picking up again. But that's really not true. Have a look at artificial intelligence related tokens. Render was the best performer in the space, and the return in the last week was pretty mixed. I think we see a short squeeze happening here. On the 10th of October, many longs got liquidated. That's true for pretty much any altcoin, and that includes Render. That then caused many optimists to leave the market, so the funding rate initially being very positive, so the longs had to pay the shorts to bet on rising prices. It then turned more neutral. Sometimes there are more pessimists, sometimes there are more optimists, but we are hovering around the zero line now. The open interest crashed, so the amounts of bets on the price, and what now seems to be happening is that because there's more shorts than longs quite often, that the market makers are buying up a lot of the supply, and they are short squeezing the remaining speculators. So first it's the longs that get liquidated, now it's the shorts that get liquidated. So the market is taking the path of maximum pain. The pace of this movement is also indicative that this might be market manipulation. Whenever the price went up that quickly, it tended to come down in the following weeks. We've seen that over here, we've also seen it here, and history might just repeat itself one more time. If the rise isn't as quick, if you're rather gradual, then a rally can last a bit longer. But I've got my doubts that this rally in Render will last for long. Now, if you want to copy trade what I personally do, then feel free to check out Premium. This here in the back is my performance, the line in black versus dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin, the line in gray. Here is the monthly alpha, so that's fluctuating of course. Some months I do not outperform buying and holding Bitcoin, but the dotted line here, that's the 12-month average. If we average out all of those data points, the monthly alpha I personally achieved was 1.9% on a very diversified portfolio. I've also opened a copy trading pool last year that made 17%, while Bitcoin during the same time period lost 25%, and there's now a new capital pool that has launched on the 1st of January. So I announce every single trade that I personally make, or you can simply just deploy your capital and then get whatever I do automatically replicated in your portfolio. A link to Premium pops up here on the screen. Just click on that. It will lead you to the website. If it's the very first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish videos regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. See you next time on YouTube or see you on Premium. Cheers!